Hi, this is Bob King, and I'd like to welcome you to our inaugural version of this podcast known as From the Chair, an opportunity for us to hopefully share some new ideas, some fresh thinking. I'm really thrilled today to have as our inaugural guest on this first podcast our fearless leader at the Personal Coach, Juli Leith. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Bob. Thank you for inviting me to join you for this first podcast.
It's my pleasure, and thanks for being available. Talk for a minute or two about what you're seeing and feeling out there as you start to work with a new advisor, client, and what are some of those challenges that we're feeling?
Sure. The environment changes on a consistent basis. We're always dealing with change. And I think that's one of the biggest things advisors and their teams face right now and have over the years is that the constant change is a huge obstacle for people in many ways, and as well, a huge opportunity. And so it's a matter of really managing that change or working through that change in as effective a way as possible. And even though I'm saying that change is constant, it's more rapid today than ever. We're seeing, things come at us from all angles. And I think, a year ago, we all got hit over the head with this pandemic, and nobody really saw that coming. And it required advisors and their teams to shift and pivot big time. And, there was a whole new world we had to navigate through rather than deal with just the normal change, right? So it's been quite a year for many people, and some have embraced that world pretty well, and others have, continued to face the challenges depending on what's going on for their clients and what's going on for their teams and what's going on for them personally in terms of, do they have kids at home? Don't they have kids at home? Working remotely, that kind of thing. So today's challenges, are much more intense, I would say, than what we would have seen a year ago.
We're seeing folks that are struggling with the remote working environment and trying to get things done where they can't just walk down the hall and hand off stuff, and
right.
where they may or may not have a process for doing things. That gets really stressed in a time like this, right?
Absolutely. And process, is probably one of the focal points of any solid business plan and strategy, but it's becoming even more apparent today to have proven process and to be process driven. And, it's an area we're all spending much more time with as coaches is, delegating to process first and making sure that everybody on the team understands the process. And whether that's for dealing with, working with a client and developing a client process, or whether it's a new business process or follow-up or a process that's required to drive technology, and have an efficient piece of technology. A lot of people think, oh my gosh, I can use Salesforce or Goldmine or Maximizer to drive this beautiful idea. But they neglect to think about the fact that a step-by-step process needs to be, defined before they can actually implement that technology. And so it's, the whole arena of compliance in the regulatory world, as well as client demands right now, are really requiring that process be really focused on. And so we're spending a lot of time as coaches right now helping our advisor clients really focus in on what are best practices around being process driven and breaking an idea down, or a particular problem down so that they can achieve great results and have a process that the whole team can follow. In regular circumstances, prior to a year ago, the clients that we work with, the advisors and their teams, are all, typically just successful despite whether they're working with a coach or not. They're successful advisors. That said, they're dealing with diffusion, and we're having to wear many hats and being overwhelmed and having all kinds of ideas and distraction and, having ideas that somebody else might be doing. And so they think, oh my gosh, that would be a great thing for us to implement. But they haven't stepped back to really think about whether or not it's really a good opportunity or a good idea for them, because they haven't developed a strategy. So it's just they're all over the map, and they're struggling, and they're stressed, and they're stuck to their, they feel tied to their business because they're just, there's so much going on in their world, and they just feel like they're on this treadmill and they can't get off. And so that just got magnified a year ago with with the pandemic and the need to become way more technology literate. It forced everybody into becoming technology literate rather than allowed them to, do whatever they needed to do in order to either embrace the technology or really put their, the excuses, I guess, around not using technology because they weren't comfortable with it. They got forced into using the technology. And so we saw people who either were quite comfortable with digital meetings like we're having right now versus meeting face to face, where some people had never used Teams or Zoom or any form of digital meeting before. And so they had to actually really learn themselves how to do that effectively. And not only did they have to learn themselves, but their team needed to learn because they were holding team meetings because everybody was working remotely. And their clients, may or may not have had the use of technology. So they've, the teams had to, the support teams and the advisors were coaching their clients through how to use Zoom, for instance, and how to do a digital signature. And so it's been a very, very challenging time from a technology perspective.
You mentioned advisors being stressed by different factors. They're also dealing with teams that are stressed and clients that are stressed. And, that puts pressure on communications and, your team framework and stuff like that. I assume you're running into those sorts of issues as well.
Absolutely. Team communication is probably one of the biggest areas we spend our time in because advisors often have a vision for what they want to achieve in their business, and it's in their head, but they don't communicate it with their team, nor is it necessarily clarified and written on paper anywhere or documented in any format. And so, that's the starting point, is what's the vision, what can everybody buy into and sort of embrace and move forward and understand what their role is that they play in that. That's one aspect of communication that has been magnified now because everybody's working remotely. But more than that, it's day-to-day stuff is where, if as our clients are working remotely. And so there might be a couple of people working in the office and 2 or 3 people working from home. It's not quite as easy to just stick your head in somebody's door and say, hey, Julie, what about this for this client? Or, just that ease of interaction on a day-to-day basis isn't there. So we're finding that it's really important for advisors and their key support team members to be connecting daily right now to make sure that operational things can be discussed or they just check in as human beings to find out how everybody's doing and to communicate and to just connect because, people are lonely today. They're really facing, many people live alone. They don't have their families with them. You can't see anybody. That's, gray day right now here in Ontario, Conestoga, Ontario. It's a blah day. People aren't getting outside as much unless they force themselves or they enjoy outdoor activities. And it's really important to connect. And I'm seeing, we all often talk about the February blahs. I think they're magnified this year. And so it's really important to connect with people. And so that form of communication is critical.
Business goes on and stuff happens. Today's environment makes hiring team members more difficult, makes training team members more difficult?
Absolutely. Well, Bob, one of the things that I'm seeing is advisors are hesitating to hire people right now because they're worried about, well, how are we going to train them? How are they going to understand that, what our processes are, and how are they going to, we can't do face-to-face training. How are we going to ever hire somebody or find somebody in today's environment? And I just want to, reassure advisors and team members out there that don't hold back. If you need to hire another team member, it's doable. And but we have to really, sort of step back and think about what are the new ways that we need to, to actually manage through the training. And so Zoom technology, again, comes into play. And, online courses are really important right now. And having somebody just have a really good documented training and development and integration plan laid out so that, we know what we need to do, and that there are the resources available, whether it's online or a person actually doing the training. We have the ability to share screens with Zoom or with Microsoft Teams and what other digital platform might be out there, and it's very doable to train somebody right now. And it's for those advisors we've worked with that have hired team members, there are meetings can be held interviews can be held over Zoom meetings quite nicely. Would it be nice to meet somebody in person? Absolutely. And in some areas of the country, they can actually do that. But right now in Ontario, Zoom's it, right? Or digital meetings are it. So people are being hired on that basis, and it's working quite nicely. I can speak to our own situation. We've had to hire a person to support us on the financial side because our fearless financial officer is actually retiring at the end of April. So, I needed to actually find somebody to replace that individual. And we did everything over the phone and by Zoom. And I think we've hired an amazing person to work with our team. And I've seen that happen with many of the advisors that we're working with as well. And, Kim Poulin, coach on our team, and Heather Amlin, another coach on our team, have been very instrumental in that hiring process, and as well as working through a training and integration program for the unique needs of each of the advisor teams we face. So, so that is a challenge today, Bob, but it's doable. It's very doable. And we're seeing great success happening out there.
One of the realities out there is, as lonely as it might seem for an advisor, wherever he or she might be, more often than not, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
No.
There are ideas, there are resources, there are folks that have gone through the same struggle, the same challenge. It's a matter of linking up to those, right?
Right. And you know what, Bob? To that point, one of the reasons I'm so pleased that we've decided to do this podcast is because right now there aren't industry events. You can't get together at a social gathering. You can't get together at a convention. You can't get together, at a industry workshop, or a series of seminars. Nobody's getting together to be able to share those best practices and or to rub shoulders, as you would say, to learn from other people because you're having dinner or having a beer with somebody, right? It's different times. So, our goal with these podcasts is to really try and bring those best practices together and have advisors hear from industry experts and coaches and other people, our other clients who are going to be sharing best practices over this next, several series as we go through this and as we continue with whatever normal is moving forward. And so I think this forum is going to be really a really good forum to hear from others.
What about just in general, that whole advisor population, Julie, the demographic piece, like there are probably lots of advisors.
A ton of time.
There are probably a lot of advisors that have been planning to exit the business or bring somebody into the business. And so what are you seeing, hearing about that part of the business?
Okay, so there, in general, over the last several years, we've really seen a demographic of aging advisors in the industry. I don't know the exact stat, but it's somewhere between the average age of an advisor, somewhere between the age of 58 and 60, probably at this stage of the game. And so there are a lot of advisors who are thinking about what's next. What's the next stage of their life looking like? How do they start winding down? They might have a business entity and they might have a good built-in succession plan because they've been thinking about it over the years, which is great. But the other piece might be a sole proprietor who needs to get into that next stage of their life, but are particularly challenged right now because they don't know how to bring in another advisor or to sell their business. So we're finding that we're spending a ton of time helping advisors figure out what their next chapter looks like, as well as personally, as well as for the business. So, an age-old challenge that advisors have because of the nature of our business is that they get so connected to their clients personally, and they've got a very intimate relationship with their clients because they learn things about their clients that no others do, and they build deep relationships with those clients. So it's tough to transition client relationships to somebody new and to have that trust bridge established. And I think in today's environment, it's even more challenging. And so, I've got a couple of situations where an advisor has taken over another advisor's business or they've merged. And there's this client base that need to meet the new team, right? Or meet the whole team. And it's tough because we can't meet personally to build that trust in that transition. And new advisors today are struggling with that as well. You really have to become innovative and to acquire new clients in this particular world. And, to be able to connect with people on Zoom and or over the phone. And so, we've been really working with our clients to find innovative ways to do that and to build that initial relationship. I think, over the past year, our clients have really been focused on really making sure that their current clients are happy and they understand what's going on with the markets in particular, because there was a lot of fear a year ago around markets as this pandemic hit. And so our clients have been very focused on proactive activity with their clients, with their current clients. And that has actually had a good effect in that because our clients have been so proactive and been so in touch with their clients, they've been telling others about, how helpful their advisors have been, and the word of mouth has actually spread. And some advisors are actually having a really good experience by acquiring new clients, but they're still struggling with, when I get an introduction to somebody, how do I make those first few meetings as impactful as possible to build that trust, right? And so it's been it's an interesting time.
Yeah, that whole area of merger and acquisition is fascinating, and you've talked a bit about the aftermath of the merger and acquisition, connecting with clients, but there's a whole front end conversation to that subject matter as well, in terms of what you're paying for and how to measure all that stuff, and that's made more difficult. Due diligence and things like that are probably a bit more difficult in today's world as well, I would think.
Although because of the technology world, I would say that is part of or an area that hasn't been as affected as it might have been. or how it is normally. I think the impact of that client relationship is probably the bigger issue. But you're right. It's still, helping an advisor figure out what their next chapter looks like, and then helping them figure out, whether they have their business ready for sale, and what that might look like. Is it am I going to completely step back, or am I going to merge with another business and transition over the next 3 to 5 years? There's so much to think about when somebody is, hitting that whatever age, 55, 70, and starting to think about what's next, right? One of the trends that we're seeing is advisors are sticking around a lot more and a lot longer, because they have merged with another practice and they don't have to think about their whole client base, or they're running the practice anymore, and they're actually becoming really good ambassadors of the new firm in terms of building relationships. And we're starting to actually see that label placed on retiring advisors quite often, because they do have such deep relationships with their clients. By them being an ambassador is really important, in particularly in today's environment. So they become this really great relationship-oriented person, or person. That's their role more than anything, and they step away from the advice and actually sit more so on the side of the table as the client in introducing. The new advisor and team, or advisors and team to the client. And so we're seeing some really neat trends out there. And the beauty of Zoom is, you can have the ambassador advisor who's transitioning out of the business, the client, and the new advisor all in the same meeting, sitting in different locations. And so Zoom, or digital meetings in general, has really increased efficiencies. There's another trend that we're seeing. Advisors and clients can connect much more easily than we would have been able to do in the past, and so that's really increased efficiency. The other digital opportunity that I see as a coach is the opportunity to have a current happy client who recognizes the value that an advisor is bringing to the table can introduce someone, a prospective client, to an advisor by Zoom. There's all kinds of really great opportunities with technology.
Julie, as we sort of start to wind this conversation down a bit, over many years, the personal coach, as an example, has established sort of 15 key areas of focus for advisors. And,
yes.
And within each of those 15 key focus areas, there is a multitude of information and learnings, et cetera. Can you just talk for a minute about a tool that we have called the Velocity Indicator and how we utilize that?
Absolutely. So as you alluded to, Bob, we have 15 areas that we think are critical areas for an advisor or the team to pay attention to in their business. They're critical success areas of practice. And so there are 15 that we know of today that we focus on as a team, and we have expertise. We have breadth and depth on our team in each of those 15 areas. 10 or 15 years ago, we might have had 10 of those areas. So this velocity indicator, as we call it, has evolved over time as the environment has changed and as we've seen critical areas evolve. And so we have this tool that you just talked about called the Velocity Indicator. It's a self-assessment tool that's done online. And it's a tool that allows an advisor to do a self-assessment of their business in those 15 critical areas. And each area has 4 or 5 questions on the Velocity Indicator. And you can, as an advisor, you can measure how important that particular area is to you, and then how well you think you're handling that particular area of business. And so it really helps to identify where the pain points are in your practice, as well as the areas of an advisor's practice that you're really handling quite well, and or areas of opportunity. And so it's a really cool little tool that really just, sort of pinpoints and provides some direction to move forward. And the areas are unique to each, where the pain points are, where the opportunities are very unique to each advisor's circumstance and their stage of business. So, when we see people who are just, getting started and wanting to invest in their business to grow and to take their business to the next level, we see a lot of stuff come out that's very focused on productivity and strategy and starting to build a team. Whereas if we're working with an advisor who's maybe at a more mature stage of their practice, it's more about scaling their business and building a business entity and or thinking about what that next chapter of their life is as they start to wind down. So this tool is quite effective for everybody, for any stage of business. But what comes out of it, as I say, is unique to the circumstance of the advisor and their team and or the stage of business they're in.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for advisors to just reflect on their practice, right? It's right on. It's an opportunity to just sort of step back for a few minutes and get out of the heat of battle and just reflect and assess, right, and be honest with oneself about where things sit. And sometimes we just get so close to those things that we don't even realize where things sit. And so this tool will at least provide that opportunity to reflect with some focus.
Yeah, it's a great tool to reflect, as you say, and provide an indicator as to where an advisor might need to go deeper in terms of their business, whether that's strategy or contact management or human resources and building team excellence or any of financial management. As you say, there are 15 areas, and so it's an indicator of where you might need to go deeper as an advisor. And so it's actually a tool that we use as a starting point when we're working with advisors when we're just getting introduced to them. And so often what we do. Not often, part of our process is that we have an advisor complete this velocity indicator prior to us having our initial complimentary consultation. And it's a point of discussion more than anything. And it really helps us explore with an advisor whether it makes sense to carry on to do a further assessment in each of these areas where we would go very deep. But whether an advisor were to engage us or not, it's still a very helpful indicator and can provide value. So, I think it, would be a tool that anyone could use and whether they determine to engage us or not.
Awesome, Julie. Listen, I really so much appreciate the fact you could take some time to join me today. And I look forward to future podcasts where we can engage other members of our team, but also industry experts and authorities on different topics, all aimed mainly at financial advisors, but not exclusively. I mean, some of them will certainly be appropriate for business owners in any industry to be privy to. So
business is business. Business is business, right? And yes, there are unique slants to the financial advisors world or any professional's world, but business is business, and there are key areas that everybody needs to pay attention to. It's my pleasure to be here. One of the things I'd like to just offer is for anybody who's listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, if you're interested in, having the velocity indicator completed for yourself, please visit our website at thepersonalcoach.ca and click on, the velocity indicator or a complimentary consultation, and you'll automatically get linked to having a velocity indicator sent to you. And or reach out to Confidence at The Personal Coach by email and request that we send you the velocity indicator link, and we'd be happy to do that as well. No obligation, just use it to help your own business. Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Julie. And
my pleasure.
And again, for all of those that have joined us today, don't keep us a secret. Spread the word about the podcast, and we'll be promoting it through different channels to create additional awareness as well. As Julie said, if you have an interest in getting more information about the velocity indicator or any other subject matter that you've heard today or is top of mind for you, just drop us a line at confidence@thepersonalcoach.ca. And if you have topics that you'd like to hear more about, feel free to drop those to me at bob@thepersonalcoach.ca, and we'll make sure they're on our list of things to try and address over the next many months. So in the meantime, thanks for joining us. Stay safe and be well.